and welcome to Dregs of Wisdom with Andrew Tanner.
All right, we are here for episode 9 of Dregs of Wisdom. I have a special guest, someone who I've only met recently, but who left a really big impression on me. So Kaylie Daniels, welcome. Kaylee has been teaching yoga and fitness for the last 10 years. She's the founder of the Glow Method app and creator. There's over 450 vinyasa, Pilates, bar, yoga, sculpt, strength, cardio, yin, and meditation classes. She's also the founder and creator of the Glow Method YouTube channel with over 80,000 followers. And she's one of the most sought after teachers at what I think is probably the coolest yoga studio in Berkshire County, Greenhouse Yoga. I took her class a couple of weeks ago. Afterwards, we had coffee, and her story just really blew me away. So I wanted to share it here on Dregs. But before we get into all that, Kaylee, very important first question. What do you believe were the causes and consequences of the Industrial Revolution?
Wow. Hi, first. Really throwing me in there with a big question. I maybe should have paid more attention to history in school, but I think that we're in a place where the Industrial Revolution really happened a lot, right, in New England. So we still see the effects of it here in these little mill towns on the daily.
You're doing great. This is just a joke first question.
Okay.
Have you ever seen Between Two Ferns?
Say that again.
Have you ever seen Between Two Ferns with Zach Galifianakis?
No,
Oh,
I haven't.
that's okay. I promise the rest of the podcast won't be this weird.
Okay.
You did great.
Thanks.
All right. So for real this time, I just want to say I met Kaylee 2 weeks ago. I took her class and I was genuinely impressed, which doesn't happen to me all the time because I've been going to yoga classes for 23 years. I practiced with some of the biggest name people. And I really had an amazing, it was different than what I'd ever done because we had weights in the yoga class. And afterwards, getting to know Kaylee and learning a little bit about her story, I kind of feel, Kaylee, that you are, you're doing what so many yoga teachers wish they were doing, which is making a career doing what you love, and offering that to the world. And I wanted to share your story because I think it'll inspire a lot of other yoga teachers, and I think you have a lot to share. So first and foremost, can you tell us a little bit like how you got into yoga and kind of what's brought you to being in this place where you have the Glow Method now?
Yeah, I went to my first yoga class in high school, actually. One of my best friends, her mom was super into hot yoga, and I would remember her coming back from the studio, like all sweaty, drenched. And one day she said, "Do you want to come with me?" And we said yes. And it was a transformative experience. The first time I felt like I was going to die, which was, a new feeling for me as a 16-year-old because I hadn't really pushed myself physically in that way. I played sports, but it was, not anything in comparison. I didn't grow up, with parents who told me to exercise, or fitness wasn't a big thing in my house. So I went to class, came back, drank as much water as I possibly could. And then the next day I wanted to go back. And it was sort of like that light bulb moment for me. I think I felt really lost for a lot of my high school, middle school years. And I felt more like myself in the yoga studio.
Wow. It's interesting that was the class kind of militant, really hard, or was it just that yoga is hard when people are new to yoga and you felt willing to dive into it?
It was hard. It was a Baptiste class, if you're familiar, which is very structured. You do the same sequence every single time you go to the studio. It's unbelievably hot, 98 plus the humidity that they pump in. So it was really just the craziest experience as a 16-year-old. Plus, a big part of the Baptiste practice or lineage is that they do that motivational speaking during class. And so it was a lot of things that I had never heard, but then they just clicked in my brain.
Yeah, because you were hearing those motivational things while actually doing the practice, as opposed to kind of hearing it as a cliche.
Yeah.
What,
and one more thing, they put me, it was a packed class, and they put me in the back next to the owner. He was taking class, and then his partner, who was the co-owner, was teaching. And so he helped me throughout the class, because they would say, you know, a pose name, and I would be like, what is that? And so he was giving me, you know, feedback and little snippets here and there. And he was my first teacher. I still go to his classes whenever I can. So I really bonded with him that day.
Where was that and who was that? Let's give him a shout out.
It's in Northampton at Shiva Shakti, and his name is Brandon Campagno, if I'm saying his last name correctly. He works with Baron Baptiste really closely, and he also owns Power Yoga Boston.
Oh, right. Oh, that's cool.
Yeah.
So how long did you practice? So, you know, obviously you've been teaching now for 10 years. We talked about it before, like the first 6 years are kind of this building process when you're a yoga teacher. What were your biggest inspirations when you first started teaching? And what do you say are your biggest inspirations now?
I had a mentorship in my early years, and this was even before I did a teacher training. And I think that worked really well for me because it was one-on-one, and I have always been more quiet, reserved, sort of shy growing up. And so I had that one-on-one connection with my mentor, and she was the inspiration to take a teacher training. She really pushed me to do that. And I got the basics. So I veer from the basics now, as you know, but she taught me really traditional Iyengar, Ashtanga yoga. So I got all of the alignment and that sort of thing under my belt, which gave me the foundation to then explore new avenues of fitness and yoga and ways to move your body.
Were you like doing privates with her in her basement? Was it like a group class? Was it kind of what was it like for you when you were first starting to practice?
They were supposed to be group classes, but we lived in the middle of nowhere in the Redwoods in California, actually in a town called Redway, which I think the population is around 1,000 people. So you could go to a group class and it would be a private because no one else would show up for class. And that happened a lot. And then eventually we just got onto a schedule where we would practice Ashtanga every Friday at 7 a.m. And it was always just me and her.
I think there's so much, you know, for anyone watching this, like if you've only ever taken yoga classes in a group setting and you don't have a lot, what I notice is teachers that actually become successful like yourself, one of the key differences is that they've had this different type of education that was more like a mentorship. Would you say that, like, and how long was that going on for? How were you practicing on your own too? Or what was that? You know, like how obsessed were you? Or was it kind of on the side?
It was pretty much the only thing that I did. My living situation at the time, I didn't have a ton of space to have a home practice. At this point, I was 20. So I had just come back from Hawaii. I lived there for 2 years after high school and then went to California. And yeah, I was 20. So I was living with a bunch of guys and doing things not related to yoga, which maybe we'll get into, but I had no space at home. And so the yoga studio was like my refuge to get away from all the boys, all the things that we were doing. And I would end up going probably every day. If there was no class, you know, I didn't go those days, but I'm pretty sure it was like an everyday thing.
So just for our audience at home, because they're probably thinking like, what were you doing with the boys? Do you want to enlighten us a little bit? Because it's not too bad. I know.
Yeah. I mean, it's legal now, but back in 2012, 2013, I was growing weed in Northern California, which maybe you already knew what I was getting at because it's Northern California. And yeah, there weren't many girls in the industry. And I went with my ex-boyfriend. So he was the one who took me to California. And then I sought refuge at the yoga studio.
What was that like? Were you ever like scared, or like, you're 20 years old, early 20s, your boyfriend's growing weed, like not small time, right? This is like a big operation.
Yeah, I should have been scared, but I think that part of my brain wasn't developed yet, and I wasn't.
I'm sorry. I mean, I'm glad we can be here now laughing about it.
Yeah. Yeah. I'm glad that I was so young, because I think that I would never do anything like that now. Not that we were doing anything crazy. It's legal now. But yes, it was a crazy
Wasn't it
time.
medicinally legal then, or in California?
Yeah, you could technically get papers and have routine inspections and that sort of thing, but we were not doing that.
And you're in you're in the old greenhouse yoga studio right now, right? You planning to bring in any plants?
Yes, I have a ton of plants at home, but it was 17 degrees this morning when I left. So I'm going to wait till it's a little warmer so that they don't get shocked too much.
Are those, you mean marijuana plants or just plants?
Just regular plants. I moved on to like flowering plants, nice house plants.
Good, good.
Yeah. From one greenhouse to the next, really.
Yes. So, you had this interesting kind of path in yoga. And by the way, I too got to spend my first kind of 5 years of yoga living with my teacher. I know you didn't live with your teacher, but you saw her pretty much every day.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that makes a huge difference. When did you start, after you took your teacher training, how did you kind of start teaching? And what was your first teaching gigs like?
So she, like I said, was the one who suggested I do a teacher training. So I found one randomly, went to Spain, did it, came back. And the thing was that I took a teacher training and then I could teach at her studio. So I was pretty much in already, which is not common for teachers straight out of a 200.
And how many classes a week were you teaching in the beginning?
I started small. I'm pretty sure my first was 3 classes a week. It's been 10 years. So I wasn't doing every day by any means, but I was at the studio every day still practicing. It was that newness to yoga, I'm sure that you experienced, where you just can't get enough of it. And so you want to be there learning new poses. I was trying to master all of the arm balances and inversions and that sort of thing. So I was very hungry to be in the yoga room.
And so when did you start your YouTube channel?
I didn't start that until late 2019.
Okay, so it's still pre-COVID, right? Wait,
Slightly.
I forget when is. Yeah.
Yeah.
So pre-COVID, which is a big deal because a lot of people didn't get online until then. What gave you, so just for those listening, like, one of the things that's amazing about Kaylee is like having 80,000 people watching your YouTube channel. That's a lot, like, I know there's people that are having the millions, but even like just to break through to where you're at now is a lot. And you're still not like a household name in the yoga world. You haven't taught at like festival. You're still, you're up and coming. But the fact that you've been as successful as you are, I guess my first question is, what gave you the confidence to just start doing YouTube videos?
My boyfriend, honestly. I knew that I had
the same guy.
Yes. Yes.
Okay.
My current boyfriend.
Yeah. It's long term. It's great.
Yeah. It's funny
Not
because
the weed guy.
No, different.
Okay.
Different boyfriend. This is the film guy. So he taught me. So I went from Northern California, living in the redwoods, super hippie. I didn't own a TV. I didn't even have a computer, actually. I was very off the grid. And so I didn't really grow up with YouTube. I was that generation that didn't get social media till I was past high school. And so I didn't even know that this was a thing, basically. I mean, I knew people posted classes on YouTube, but he was like, you're so good at teaching, you should share this with the world. And he said, all you have to do is teach. I'll set up the camera, I'll set up the lighting, I'll get a mic, and you just teach. And it was definitely a learning curve, but he was the one who pushed me to do it. And like you said, it was pre-COVID a little bit, and I was really inconsistent before COVID. And then March hit, and I couldn't teach in studio anymore, which I was doing a lot back then. And I had to reevaluate what I was doing because I wanted to keep teaching. I love teaching. And so I just started filming nonstop.
It's like, when you say nonstop, how many classes a week were you putting up during that time?
Well, like I said, it was inconsistent at first. My upload schedule now is once a week, which is pretty reasonable, I think.
Wait, just one video a week?
For YouTube. I post more on my app. But back then it was inconsistent. And I was doing Zoom classes as well with Greenhouse. Alex and I were teaching every day, just us two, switching off on Zoom. And so that sort of let me get comfortable in front of the camera, because it is weird teaching in front of the camera. If you've never done it before, you have to do all the poses. You don't have any feedback, from your students in terms of how they're moving or their energy. And it feels a little bit lonely sometimes, but I eventually got comfortable enough with it that I was like, why don't I turn this into something else? Because it's hard to grow on YouTube.
Like, when did your YouTube kind of take off? Like, did you have to do marketing? Like, what made it kind of jump? Do you remember?
I honestly think that it was COVID. Even though 2020, I remember I saw a screenshot recently of the end of 2020. So it was like December sometime. I only had 2,000 subscribers total on YouTube. So I've grown, 2021, 2022. 2022 was a big year. I had a video go viral, and that really pushed my channel. But it was a short, honestly. When they started pushing shorts on YouTube, I posted one of me doing like a handstand, and it got 9 million views. I don't know. It's crazy. Yeah.
So that one video that you kind of was almost like a throwaway of just doing a handstand.
Yeah, it was an afterthought.
And that was a thing that just tipped the algorithm in your favor. And then all these, from nearly 80,000 followers on YouTube, how do you kind of bring someone from that to signing up for your app, being a regular student of yours? What's that kind of process like?
Well, I think it's a balance between giving them a taste and also building trust with them in that way, that I'm consistent with posting and I'm consistent with teaching a good, high quality produced class. Because if no one has taken your class, especially online, they're not going to know what's happening in the app. I do offer a free trial as well. So people can technically sign up for free for the first 7 days, but you have to add your card. You have to remember to cancel if you don't want to pay. So it's a balance. Right now I'm posting only once a week. And so I give them enough where, some people who only need a little bit, they cannot subscribe to the app and be happy. But those people who really want to dive deeper with me and experience more offerings, they come over to the app. And yeah, YouTube has been my primary funnel.
Do you have to do you respond to comments and stuff, or do you get do people just click the links in the descriptions? Is that how it works for you?
Yeah, and I am honestly very chill in terms of promoting. I honestly should be better, but I don't want to be salesy. I'm not going to sit there every single video and say, oh, go sign up for my app. I'm happy that people are practicing with me on YouTube in the first place. So I put links in the description. And sometimes if I'm running a sale or when I just launched my new app, so I had one before, but then I improved it a lot. So I launched a brand new one. And so I announced it for the first couple of weeks of this year, just so people know that it's new.
Right. And I should say, it's not that, people think about, I think there's a lot of great yoga teachers out there. I think that you have to have a certain level of skill, which you obviously do have. I want you to, in a minute, maybe talk a little bit about your philosophy of teaching, because I found it really interesting to practice with you. But I just want to say, I think it's that combo of being a great teacher and putting out content enough that, and just having that regular consistency that you can kind of get the bounce, like to go from 2,000 to 80,000 subscribers kind of is a big jump. What do you think your, like, how do you think of your philosophy when you're for the glow method, for example?
So actually what I think really propelled me in the YouTube world was that I taught Yoga Sculpt, which is the class that you came to in person. And that was not widely offered on YouTube at all. And so this has been a class that I have gotten inspired by studios like Core Power teaching it. And it's called the same thing, but I've morphed it into my own. And this class sort of symbolizes how I feel about fitness. And I think that there's a lot of people who really love the traditional yoga, and I do too in certain ways, but I don't think it's the end all be all. I think it's so important to add, resistance in the form of weights or bands or other equipment, and to work our body in a holistic way, because yoga can't do everything. We use a lot of our push muscles, as we've talked about, and I saw such an improvement from when I switched to just yoga into incorporating other types of movement into my practice. Like, my body feels so much better. I don't get those Ashtanga injuries anymore. Maybe you know what I mean. I feel like I was always getting injured in Ashtanga. So that sort of made me want to create a class that would sort of cater to everybody as well. It bridges the gap between people who love weight workouts and don't really know yoga yet or love yoga. And so it kind of brings everyone together in a way.
Yeah, I think that was what I found special about the class, like using weights and creating pull movements, which are just never done in a traditional yoga class. And I think people might be missing out in a way of balancing the body. What, besides asana, besides posture work, what other limbs of yoga, or kind of how do you live yoga in your life outside of just the practices? Are there any part of the philosophy that's important to you as well?
Yeah, I mean, all of them for sure. It goes sort of in waves, as maybe you also feel that way. I am always working to improve my meditation practice. And even though I don't offer that type of thing as much because I haven't been trained in meditation necessarily, I do have my own practice and that sort of thing. But I try to live, like, if I have a reactive emotion or state to something, I always try to bring myself back to this room, the yoga room. And do you react in the same way that you would, if someone cuts you off in traffic? Would you like scream in a yoga class and react that way? You know what I mean? So that sort of guides, like, that even keeled, cool, chill. I'm pretty chill anyways. But maybe it was from growing weed for a couple of years in my early 20s.
I'm like, were there plants just all around the house?
I just try to live in, like, bring all aspects, non-stealing, whether it's people's time or, you know, obviously monetary things. And yeah, I just try to live in the way that I move on my mat. If that makes sense.
So I'm curious, what do you think? I asked this to a lot of people. You know, you're a very chill person, and many of the people I interview are yogis and practitioners. What triggers you in life? What challenges you?
I would say that I do get hangry. So if I'm not fueling my body, those are moments where I react. And my boyfriend probably is the one who experiences it the most. But honestly, besides like the physical, if my physical body feels any type of way that's not positive, that's when I get triggered mostly. But I honestly don't feel like I get triggered other than that. And I think the yoga really helps, honestly.
You mentioned in your bio, and if you don't want to talk about this is fine, but you mentioned that you dealt with some disordered eating in the past. Is that something that you can share a little about, and how has yoga helped you with that? And do you remember kind of how you got over that through yoga?
Yeah, I had a bad eating disorder when I was younger. The first time that I went to an astrologer to get my birth chart read, he was like, "I'm surprised you're still alive," basically. And
I'm sorry to, like, when did it start?
I was in 5th grade when it started, so I was young.
Wow.
And it's interesting because it was pre-social media, and we think a lot of that sort of thing comes from social media. But back then we had magazines that were essentially the same thing. And it runs in my family as well. And so I went from being, you know, normal to 70 pounds and the same height that I am now, and in 6th grade. And yeah, it was a lot. And I went through it all of middle school. I had disordered eating and I was in and out of the hospital. And then eventually it got to the point where I didn't want to be in the hospital anymore. And I actually started smoking weed. And that honestly helped me get out of the eating disorder a little bit, because you get the munchies. Yeah.
What was it? Did you just want to be thin? What was it? Do you remember the thoughts or the vrittis, if we use it, like the unhelpful vrittis that were going on in your adolescent mind?
Honestly, eating disorders are a weird thing because you kind of don't notice that it's happening when it is. And so I always grew up with the magazines, like I was saying, and I was really into fashion. I still am. And so magazines were the thing that really inspired me, and I would always be getting them. And it subconsciously worked its way into my mind that you have to be the skinny. And back in the, you know, this was around 2005 to 2007-ish. So it was the early 2010s, where it was just, that was the ideal. It was like super skinny. And so it worked its way in, and I didn't realize it, that I was doing it, until actually my dad came to me, and he's very stoic, never seen him cry. You know, my mom was the more emotional one, and he came to me so upset, being like, we need to do something, like, you're not okay. And yeah, that's when I realized that I was super unhealthy, because you have body dysmorphia when you have an eating disorder as well.
Wow, I really appreciate you sharing this stuff. I mean, as a father, and I told you this, I think, when I first met you. When I met you, I was so excited. I'm like, I want to bring my daughter to your class.
Yeah.
You know, and when you told me your story of how yoga class like inspired you and made you want to work hard, made you want to, like, you know, do something that was challenging. What was the eating disorder? How when it was kind of butting up against that time, was you still going on when you first found yoga, or was it kind of Can you share a little more about it?
Yeah. And so when I got into high school, I transformed from being anorexic to having orthorexia, which is basically just obsessed with everything healthy. So I started eating again, but I was vegan. And so I was really restrictive with my diet, eating enough food, but maybe not getting enough nutrients or protein or macros. And so I went through high school that way, in and out of vegan, vegetarianism. And I honestly didn't heal my relationship with food till like my mid-20s probably. I spent a lot of time being vegan pretty much until I was 23. I was super strictly vegan, and that's super prominent in the yoga world, honestly.
What made you want to be vegan? And then what do you think? Well, yeah, first, what made you want to be vegan? And do you think it was more the yoga kind of, not like the pure yoga peer pressure, like everyone else is doing it, not like they're trying to force it necessarily, but was it that, or was there an ethical reason, or what were your reasons for being vegan?
A little bit of everything. It was honestly peer pressure-ish in that yoga studio that I used to go to, and they still are vegan, but it was talked about in class. And so that was sort of my introduction to it. And both the owners were vegan. And I was always interested in that sort of thing. Like I said, I grew up pretty traditional. And so I didn't even know that people didn't eat meat until I went to yoga.
Right.
So, yeah. And I wanted to be healthy. I wanted to do it for the animals. But it's that sense of control that you have over the food, which I struggled with previously.
So when did you decide to, when do you think you really crossed the threshold of, I don't know how you identify your relationship with food now, but what was it like when you, first of all, maybe left veganism, and maybe you could talk about why you made that decision and kind of where you are now with everything.
Yeah, my ex-boyfriend, so the first one that I talked to, he was never vegan, even though I was. And I was really restrictive. I would grow all of our food. I didn't eat anything out of a package, like to the extreme. And so he would go fishing for king salmon in Oregon. And one day he came back, bunch of fresh fish, and salmon was one of my favorite foods pre being vegan. And he was like, you just have to try it. I just caught it. I killed it myself. Like, this is the most natural way you can get a fish. And so he cooked it and I ate it. And the way that my body responded to the nutrients was so eye-opening. I felt like I took MDMA, honestly. Like, my body was so hyped up and felt so good. Like, my brain, I don't know, like the fat from the fish, my brain just needed whatever was in that fish. And that was a light bulb moment where I said, maybe I should listen to my body instead of follow these traditional rules of being a vegan. So I started with just fish that he caught, and I incorporated that into my vegan diet first. And my body was just so happy that I just kept introducing things, eggs, a long time later, dairy. But yeah, now I just eat everything. I enjoy, which before I never enjoyed meals out because I was always worried about, if I could find something that I could eat or what they were using to cook with, like the oils, or if the food was organic, that sort of thing. And so it was a good intention to be healthy or mindful with eating, but it spiraled into a controlling, unhealthy stress feeling every time I ate.
Wow. I mean, that amazing awakening is the actual listening to your body. And it's interesting, it parallels your yoga journey, because when you listen to your body as a yogi, that's when you realize, like, oh, weights are good.
Totally. Yeah.
Because there's a lot of yogis that are doing things because either that's the rule. Like that's what the tradition says we're supposed to do. And there's, and you know, in its defense, classically, hatha yoga was about transcending the body. You know, as a Taoist myself, I believe that our yoga should help us get more into the body, and that the body will one day decay and die, but that doesn't mean we shouldn't like fully embrace that part of us.
Right.
That's really, thank you for sharing all that. I really didn't know we were going to go there. So let's switch gears a little bit. You mentioned, you know, that you're interested in fashion. Is there kind of a yoga clothing line on the horizon? Is that kind of like, where does that still live in your world somewhere?
That would be fun. I do think about when I'm older in age, am I still going to be teaching Sculpt classes, or maybe I'll transform my business into something that I can do without moving my body. And I would love to. That's definitely something to think about, but probably not anytime soon.
Okay, I want to shift gears now into more of the business side for those friends of mine who are yoga teachers and who are maybe thinking of starting their own YouTube channel, or, you know, kind of making a living as a yoga teacher. You know, do you think what do you advise other teachers who you think maybe they're good teachers, they've been teaching long enough, and they're trying to figure out how they should manage their career? What kind of advice do you normally give them?
Yeah, I think that everyone wants to be an online teacher, but they don't realize what it takes. And also, some people might just not like being an online teacher because, like we talked about before, it can be really lonely. And if you're used to teaching in studio classes with that feedback and connection to people, which I think we need more than ever right now after the pandemic, you might not love it. So I think that you should give anything a shot, but don't be too hard on yourself if it doesn't work for you. And there are other ways to be a yoga teacher in the virtual space without having to create a YouTube channel or create an app or something like that. If people are wanting to create a YouTube channel, I think that consistency is the best advice that I can give, because like I said, I went through my first little over a year with 2,000 subscribers. I didn't have
a year to build to 2,000, you're saying?
Yeah, it took a long time. Yeah.
And you were doing one video a week for that year, or you were doing more than one in the beginning?
No, I was really inconsistent. I honestly didn't even post one a week. So that's probably part of the reason why I didn't grow. Actually, an interesting thing that happened was I was reached out to by a really big company, and they were creating a fitness app, and they found me through YouTube. Like, a couple of my videos did really well, regardless of me having subscribers, because that happens on YouTube. You can get a ton of views on a video without having subscribers. And I was teaching Yoga Sculpt primarily, which is a really unique style of class. And so this company reached out to me, and I was like, this is crazy. Obviously, I'm doing something right. And so I went through 6 months of creating content for them to have them say that, oh, we're actually not creating this app anymore. Everything's done. I still had all that content that I then posted on YouTube, but that was sort of a moment where I was like, okay, I am doing something right, even though I'm not seeing the subscribers necessarily go up. And so that was something that sort of pushed me to keep going. And, you know, obviously that won't happen for everyone. And I think that was a very specific thing to happen during COVID, because this was August 2020 when they reached out to me. But go ahead.
Sorry. No, go ahead, finish what I didn't mean to interrupt. I apologize.
I was just going to say, being consistent now more than ever is important, because, and I know people say this all the time, and I don't believe that it's too saturated, because I'm of the mindset that there's plenty of people in the world, and your people will find you regardless of, you know, thousands of other teachers, hundreds of thousands of other teachers being on YouTube. But that's sort of the mindset that some people can get in, that it's too saturated, everyone does it now, and then they stop because they're not seeing the growth happen right away.
Yeah. How did you go from, you know, as you were growing from 2002, even before your video got, before you had that video go viral, like, when did you start your app? And your app is through Uscreen, right? The Uscreen software. So just for people out there, like, you don't have to like build an app with an engineer. There are softwares that you can use to build an app. So with your Uscreen app, how did you kind of grow that membership from 0 to, you know, hundreds of members or whatever it is now?
Yeah, well, I started on Arquetta. It was Sutra, actually, when I started. Then they rebranded. And that was a really affordable way to start, because I started it with 2,000 subscribers. So end of 2020 was when I signed the contract to start the first app. And I basically had nothing, you know, like 2,000 subscribers is good, but
those aren't emails though. Those aren't like people that you actually have a relationship with, right? You can't send them an email. So they're just people that kind of follow your videos on YouTube.
Yeah. I think I maybe had 10,000 followers on Instagram. Maybe it could have honestly even come after that. So I was like blind faith from me. I was like, this feels right. I'm going to do it. And I hope that people will follow me. And so the first year I launched the app in January, and this was 2021. And I focused a lot on live classes then to sort of build that community. So I would do a weekly live class versus now I just do live stream.
Oh, live stream. Yeah. Like a Zoom class.
Yeah. And that I felt like was a really good way to get people to know me, rather than me just, you know, put up a bunch of videos where I record them, upload them, and it's impersonal. And so that was my focus when I started. I eventually went to just one live class a month, which is what I currently do. But yeah, I honestly just trusted that I would make it. And if I didn't, you know, I would cancel my app and try to do something else.
But what I mean is, like, how did you get people to sign up for the app? Were you, because you don't have their email, they're people from YouTube. Were they people that took your in-person classes? Like, how are you getting them? Did you just have links and people just clicked on them from the YouTube over time?
Yeah, like I said, I'm very chill in terms of my marketing. No marketing strategy.
My producer is laughing right now. He's like, no marketing strategy.
I'm like the classic yoga teacher. No marketing strategy. You know, I put out good content. We had nice cameras, that sort of thing. So I built trust with them through YouTube. They saw that I could produce high quality classes that they loved. So I just put links in my YouTube descriptions, kept posting on YouTube. Eventually more and more people would sign up. I was building a mailing list at the time as well. So I had it on my website, and it was small, but I would add, you know, the subscribers to the app, to the mailing list. I would post on Instagram. TikTok wasn't a thing yet. So.
And you were doing all that yourself. You were doing the behind the scenes, the admin, you know, all the descriptions, all the keywords, all that. That was all you.
100% me.
One woman show. Your boyfriend was doing the filming, which is really great. How important do you think it is do you think that, you know, that the quality of content is maybe what helped you put it over the edge? Or do you think that you could have still been successful without the high production value of the content?
I think that it did help in a big way, because everyone has an iPhone now. So that's like the baseline for content. Everyone can produce it. Yeah. So I do think that helped, and it feels more, I have the same cameras that Allo Moves use. Like my production is literally the same as theirs. So I think that definitely helps in a very big way because, and I've always been creative. I was going to go to art school and do fashion before I decided yoga, and moving to Hawaii was a better idea. And so that, like, having a good aesthetic, people are in their home probably with laundry, or they're looking at their kitchen, or their kids are running around. So creating a serene space on the screen for them to go at home, I think was really important.
I think that's awesome. And I agree. Okay. Let's, I'm trying to think if there's anything I haven't asked you on the business side.
I do have one more thing to say.
Oh, please. Yeah.
That just popped into my head. And I do think that having some sort of special offering, and I know that's kind of cliche to say, and also kind of feels like obviously you should have a special offering if you're putting it out into the internet. But I truly think that if I had just posted run-of-the-mill yoga classes, I wouldn't have had the growth that I did, because I was posting, I saw what the YouTube world needed and took that niche, and was one of the first people to post yoga sculpt classes on YouTube, besides like the Core Power official YouTube channel. And so I think finding something that makes your class special is a way to bring your community in. And that could be the way that you sequence. It could be, philosophy that you bring into the practice, anything, but it shouldn't just be those like classic YouTube yoga classes,
Right. So do you do now videos that are kind of like specific, like hamstring, like that kind of stuff? Or do you map it out? Do you plan it? Or is each one just a unique class?
Yes. I now on my new app build the monthly calendar with my community. So I have a community forum page where I will post, what do you want this month? And people will come in with all of their suggestions for classes. Like this month, I posted a yoga for runners class that's all about like ankle mobility, knee health, feet, that sort of thing, leg muscles. And so I take suggestions a lot, which I think is also something that you can't really get online a lot of the time. It's not like if you have an Allo Move subscription, you can write into them and ask for a certain type of class. No one's going to respond. So right. I think that
whatever, that's going into a black hole.
Yeah, exactly. So I think having that connection with the community, they really value, because I listen to them. I see what they need, and then I give it to them if it's reasonable.
Awesome. Okay, last question. This is more of a personal one. What has got your mind share right now that's not yoga teaching? Like, what are you Googling about when you're bored? Or, what is intriguing to you right now? What concepts, philosophies, thoughts, habits, ideas? What gets you excited right now that you're interested in, you'd want to maybe share with our friends here at Dregs of Wisdom?
Honestly, like nervous system healing, which maybe I feel like that's sort of a trendy thing on social media right now, but I've lived my life, and this is why I love yoga so much, like a very anxious on the inside, even if I look really chill and cool on the outside. And so being a business owner, which I'm sure you can relate to, is high stress. It's something that you wake up thinking about, you go to bed thinking about, your day is consumed, and it's always unstable. So I'm looking into, like cold exposure, which my boyfriend will laugh if he listens to this because I hate the cold. But I want to like heal my nervous system in ways that yoga doesn't necessarily do. Because like I said, it's not an end all be all. We have to have those other little things that support our body, and then it will run over into our yoga practice.
So what's the practice that you're doing right now for that right now? If you had to pick one, have you tried the cold exposure?
A little bit. I've tried it. In the fall, I did go swim in Vermont, like, you know, in October when it's pretty cold. It wasn't freezing by any means, little bits. And my boyfriend, he has a sauna at his mom's house. His dad is Finnish, so he built a wood-fired sauna. So when it snows, we sauna, go outside in the cold, sit in the snow, go back to the sauna, that sort of thing. But honestly, the biggest thing that I am trying my best to implement in my life is no phone early in the morning. Like, I have the tendency to pick up my phone, or like if you roll over now in the new iPhone, it detects movement, so it will light up automatically. And that's like so triggering for me because I see all my notifications and I'm like, oh my God, my emails, like, I need to check it. So first half an hour of waking, I'm trying to do no phone at all.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm a big no phone guy. I've tried many times to ditch it completely. But well, cool. Kaylee, this is so fun. I really enjoyed getting to know you a little better, and I'm really grateful that you shared a little more of your story with us. I think a lot of people will be able to relate to it. Is there anything that you want to promote before we kind of head out, besides that you're going to be one of the teachers at the Berkshire Yoga Festival this summer?
Yeah, that's a big one. I'm so excited to teach at the Berkshire Yoga Festival. It's my first one. And besides that, you can Google my name and everything will come up. You can YouTube my name.
We'll put the links in the show notes too, for sure.
Yeah. And I can do a free month on the app for the listeners of the show. I'll make the code WISDOM.
Okay. Well, we'll make sure to put that in the show notes. So Dregs of Wisdom listeners, you get a free trial of the Glow method, and highly, highly recommend it. So thank you so much. That's very kind of you.
Yeah. Thank you. So
all right. I think we're gonna call it a close. Thank you.
Okay,
Peace
amazing.
to you.
Thank you.